So I think what I'm going to do is before we actually get started here, I'm going to have everybody that went stand up and introduce themselves, and then we're going to talk a little bit and we'll get started. I'm Margaret Sweetalk.
I'm Emily Sweetalk.
I'm Charlie Skoglin.
Louise Skoglin.
Lonnie Sweetalk.
Tara Peters. Mary Wyke.
Brian Anderson.
Michelle Anderson.
Mimi Amanda.
Okay, so out of this group that's standing right here, who are the climbers? Okay. Who was the village group? Okay. And we're going to try and share all of our aspects, and like I said, we're going to try and move this along so that it's not fall asleep time. We're going to partially be standing, sitting as we need to, so we'll just kind of work around that. First of all, as we get into this, we really want to stress to you, I think oftentimes it is spoken of as the fact that this was a mission trip. How was your mission trip? Tell me about your mission trip. While it's not incorrect to say it wasn't a mission trip. To some degree it is. But before it's a mission trip, it's a partnership. The partnership between two churches, a partnership between lives, a partnership of relationships, of getting to know each other, and not this, oh, it's somebody over in Africa, or it's somebody over in the United States. A partnership is where you hold up each other mutually to the benefit of the other person. That is coming into partnership with somebody. I will uphold you. A marriage, a good friendship. It's a partnership. It is upholding the other one so that they benefit. A mission happens under a partnership. Building the BCC, building a caring community, which we will talk about that. The building of that is a mission. These climbers going on a climb to benefit the BCC, that was a mission under the partnership. The village people, the village group, connecting with prayer brothers and prayer sisters and getting to know them more personally, that is a mission, and that's an ongoing mission also. But those are the result of a partnership. And so I just want you to understand that while, yes, it is a mission, it's also a partnership that comes first. And Tara, you were going to share. There's Tara. Well, okay. We'll just start with this first. The picture that you have up here, we took this picture in Amsterdam. Our group from Nebraska flew from Omaha to Minneapolis, Minneapolis to Amsterdam, Amsterdam into Kilimanjaro International Airport. The group up there is all of us that you've seen here this morning. Plus you'll see a couple extras in there. You'll see Pastor Matt is over on the right, and Becky is behind him. In front of Pastor Matt is Emily Deal, and she's from Illinois, Pastor Matt's current congregation. And in front of Emily is Deanne McMorris, and she's also from Pastor Matt's Illinois congregation. So they joined us, our two groups, they went from Chicago to Amsterdam, and this is where our group met up. Some of you may remember that this group traveled out to Illinois in, I think it was March, if I remember correctly, so that we could actually meet them and start to form this team. The other ones you will also notice in there, in the back kind of between me and Charlie with the beard, is Josh Bonfleth. That's Pastor Matt and Becky's son. And then if you look over behind Brian with the other little bit of a facial hair, that's Micah. And that is Pastor Matt and Becky's son also. We just kind of bring this up. This is where Tanzania is. And we just kind of give you people talk about, well, what part of Africa is that in? It's on the east coast. A lot of times we'll tell them, well, where Africa bumps out over on the right, that's Tanzania's just below that. It's below Kenya. And that island, it's Madagascar, correct? That's off to the side there. And then this is the actual blown up more of Tanzania. If you get up, see where Kenya is in the upper right there. Then you see Mount Kilimanjaro, the star. And you see a little green circle, Moshi. Moshi is the main town where we have the village area or the countryside area beside Moshi. Arusha is a red dot over there to the left of Moshi. The airport is kind of somewhat to that degree that we fly into. Once we fly into Kilimanjaro International Airport, we have a good 50 to 60 minute drive to get from the airport to get to our destination where the church is at.
Okay, I am talking about Musaranga Mandaka because everyone else who is in the village team will be talking about sub-parishes that they visited the second Sunday that we were there. We kind of broke out and were able to send people to each of the other parishes. I stayed at Musaranga Mandaka, which is the center parish for all of it. This is the front gate, which I don't know what that says. What does that say? Jesus is Lord is what the gate says. That was always open when we got there. I don't think I ever saw it closed. No, you're good. At night would be the only time it's closed, to be more secure. This is the main parish. That whole building is the sanctuary, and there were usually stacks of chairs outside because more often than not, there were people sitting outside. They have their bell over there. That was rung as the pastors were coming in every Sunday. This is the parsonage, which I believe last time was in the process of being built 4 years ago. So that's just recently done. This is a tent, which is normally there and up for the confirmation kids. They added the white behind it, and the tables in there are actually from the BCC for us to use, and that's where we spent most of our time when we weren't out doing anything. That's where we ate all of our meals. You can see the bucket over on the right-hand side for washing your hands. And then there's Mary. This is from the first Sunday there. This is one of the choirs. It's set up so they have the front like ours, and then they had two sections on the sides, and then the way back, and then an upper part. This is one choir, and then I think the next picture. This is the whole church, the whole sanctuary. Even in the top there, it's completely packed full, and there's people sitting outside, and Mary. And then the next one is just the other side, which is another choir that was there. We found out the second Sunday we were there, we heard that there had been 1,600 people there that first Sunday when we were there, which might have been a little bit up because we were there, but it's probably a pretty close to accurate number. This was the confirmation kids, Sunday school kids. They would, after church, they would come from back where the preschool was and come down all of the property to get to the church, and it is like a small parade. There are that many kids. Do we know how many there actually were? Okay. There are a lot of kids. Sunday school? 500 Sunday school kids. So, small parade. This is the auction, like what we have done in the fellowship hall before, the first fruits auction. This was fun to actually get to watch. We all processed out to a song, and the pastors would go over one direction, and you had the auctioneers, more or less, and are those the evangelists that are in the, like, deacons? Because for those who don't know, the auction is for those who don't have actual monetary funds to give to the church for offerings. So they do an auction of what they have. So there's a lot of produce, sometimes live animals. Micah got a chicken last time. Lots of produce, handmade things. I got a bowl the second Sunday that we were there, and I got it because it looked really neat. I'm like, somebody actually made that. But as I got it, I realized that it actually looks like it's been used, and somebody actually gave that bowl because that's what they had. So they brought that and gave that. Okay. That was a parachichi tree, which is avocado, apparently. Yep. All right, who's doing manjaka?
So on the Saturday, after the climbers came back, we came together as a group, so all 16 of us, along with 5 or 6 of our family in Tanzania, all came together to be able to go to our sub-parishes. So we're going to talk about the 4 different sub-parishes. The first one is going to be Mandaka Jew. I do know in kilometers, this is about 8 miles, or 8 kilometers to get to center. I know that because Evangelist Peter and I were talking, we spent a lot of time together. It happens to be Brian's prayer brother. But he told me that's how far he drives on a motorcycle and then goes back on a motorcycle, and that's how he gets to and from Mandaka Jew, where he lives, and he's the evangelist for this parish, and he's also the evangelist for the first service on Sundays at Center. So this is our welcome when we got there. This is the first center we went to. The dresses that you see the ladies wearing, that is what they welcomed us. They all were wearing them when we came to the airport. There was a bunch of people there. But you'll see that fabric is on the back table. They gifted a lot of the women that fabric along with a little bag that we got. But when we arrived there, they gave us flower leis that they started putting on around our necks, singing songs that we really didn't know, but it's just amazing. This is the center, or this is the sanctuary, and it's basically a building. Mchungaji Mateo, or Matt, Pastor Matt. Nema is on the left. She was our translator for us. She is actually one of the daughters of the Sweet Talks where they stayed. So she came with us that day. And then Evangelist Peter is over on the other side. He is the one that does the sermons and talks. This was the food that we ate. As Charlie said, we were blessed with food everywhere. This is the second meal that I believe we had that day or third. A lot of us had breakfast in the homes. We came to the parish. We ended up having chai, which is like a meal for us. And then this is our first meal that we received. We always had bottles of water because the water's not safe for us to drink. We had popcorn. We had karanga, which is peanuts, 2 different kinds of potatoes, some soup, rice, watermelon at this place. So we were guests. We went through first, and then they all ate. The people you see, Evangelist Peter is standing there with some children. We ended up giving a bunch of Beanie Babies. Illinois had a bunch of Beanie Babies that we gifted to the children. So they received those. I don't know what else. Okay, so then we left that place, and our time was short. We were rushed through because the next parish was waiting for us. So at Mandaka Emmanuel, Mary and I will talk a little bit about.
Okay, this was amazing. You drive down a cornfield for miles or whatever, and these children just come rushing at us, and they were running beside the vehicles, and they were happy, and they were singing, and they were making their chant. It was just goosebumply. So I suppose it was about a half a mile before we finally got to the church. And there is the church, very simple structure, but the people there, when they sing, it's a joyful song. It's not just singing. It is from their heart, and the children there were just amazing. I don't know how to describe it. Just more singing. They had a choir there, and they didn't stand still when they sang. They were doing synchronized dancing, and they loved to sing. And as you can see, they pulled us up there. We had to dance with them. They didn't care. We didn't care. But they gave us straw hats to the men, and the women got bags. And this was all handmade from what they have there on their house, wherever they live. This is a lady making batik. She showed us how they do it. It's a beautiful process, which I enjoyed watching very much. And they sold a lot of stuff that they made. So this was kind of a gift to them. But this was cool. This is where the teen choir group is building a new motorcycle shop where they can fix the motorcycles and also sell the parts. And from that income, that will go to their youth. But when Pastor Matt was there, he blessed the ground and broke the first ground. So the Sunday after church, right after church, they're in their good clothes, out there digging. And they had to use a pickaxe because this ground was so hard. But by the time we left, they had the foundation. Granted, it wasn't a super big building, but they were working in their good clothes and all. They take turns. So that will probably be built in who knows how long. It won't take them long. This is the well that was put in there. Christ the Servant and Pierce also put this well in 2014. The evangelist told me that the first time they dug it, it didn't go deep enough because the water was still muddy, so they had to go deeper. But as you can see, they have clean running water. Sunday morning when the three of us went to church there, you could see off in the distance, the church is in the background there, but you could see in the distance people coming with their sliding buckets on ropes and buckets like this, waiting in the line to get their water for the day. That's the only water they had. That's what the little boys would pull. They would concoct some sort of sliding bucket, put their bucket in it, and that's how they went to get their water for the day, for anything, drinking, shower, cooking, which really makes you humble. But these were happy children. They just grabbed onto our fingers and wouldn't let go. This is a house. After church, they took us around the so-called neighborhood. And this is a house. It is sticks, and they put mud in it. And dung, whatever they can find. This is a house. It's one of the poorer houses, but in the rainy season, this area floods. Pastor Matt said it floods. And so they will probably lose this house, but they'll rebuild again. But there are other people that have more solid houses. I don't know if we have a picture of it, but they're more brick. But the water raises up. I asked the evangelist, I said, so how do they survive in the flood season? They will hang their beds from the ceiling, and that's how they sleep. But they just hang out in the water or try to get on the roof, whatever. This is what they have, and because of the road construction that they did, it causes this area to flood almost every summer. Their summer, not our summer. So
That morning where we were at in Saranga Mandaka, where we had stayed, it was raining. So Brian and I were sitting at breakfast saying, are we going to be able to get to worship at Mandaka Emmanuel? Praise God that we were, because it did not rain at Mandaka Emmanuel. But it was a good rain that, had it continued raining and it was raining there, we would not have been able to get there to worship with them. So.
Betheli is one of the other sub-parishes. Most of you have heard us talk about Mama Louie Mfungavo. That is one of our main contacts there. And Mama Louie, this is the main parish that she worships at because it's one of the closest to her house. Our greeting there, this was our third parish, sub-parish of that Saturday that Michelle mentioned. This was the third parish that we went to. Once again, we were delayed in getting there. They expected us much earlier. So a jubilant welcome again as we're walking towards church. This is the inside. As you will notice, if you notice on the upper left, it truly is just a brick and mortar building, open. The windows, there is no window in the openings. There are no screens, and no doors. There's absolutely, it's just open. Wherever you would think a door should be, it's just open. Or wherever there's a window, it's just open. There is nothing there, okay? But they do have the front of that draped with the stuff to make it look more like an altar. I want to point this out especially. Our women's group from Christ the Servant sent some money over to help. Betheli was in the process. You know how we have a church building here, and our kitchen is part of our church building. Not there. Your church is separate. Your kitchen is separate. Your toilet is separate. They are separate buildings. So we had sent some money over because Betheli was in the process of working to build a kitchen. And so this is that building. The door on the right that is actually open, that has a door. There's kind of an entryway there, and then the kitchen is in the back. And I have to tell you that the kitchen still is in process of being finished. I mean, they cooked on little gas stove type stuff, but it's not complete like we would think our kitchen's complete. So it's still a work in process. On the back side of the building, right, you see the two windows on the left? On the back of that is the pastor's office, just a small room. And then that, where the windows are in the front, is a meeting room. And there was some tables in there, and that's where they counted the money after Sunday, just like we count the money here. And, but they can have meetings in there also. And I made sure I took this picture because Mama Louie took me over to this. Basically, we'd probably call this like a China hutch to some degree, like what we would call it here. This is also where part of our money that our women sent over went to the purchase of this because they needed some place. I have to tell you, it's very dusty over there, very dirty. In fact, the shoes I was wearing this morning when I put them over still look red from Tanzania dirt. So they have a very hard time keeping things clean. So when the dishes, the cups, the silverware, the linens, you see on the bottom in the middle there's linens there. When those things are done with and clean, they get put into this. And so they were very thankful that they had some money to put towards this so that they could keep their things clean and ready for use again the next time. Betheli is in the process of building a new parish. Not a parish, a new church. When we went 4 years ago, this is going to be a large building because they are growing. Betheli is growing in numbers. The main level of this was all that was up. Now, here we are 4 years later, and they are this far. And so they're making progress, but oftentimes in Africa, you have some money, you do some building, then you wait until you have more money, and then you do the next part of the building, and then you wait till you have more money, and then you do the next part of the building. So it's a process. It doesn't happen necessarily in a short amount of time. This could take years. The women also, we tried to share some of the parish sisters in each of our sub-parishes and sub-parishes. We shared things with them, took gifts over. But these women produce what we would call crafts, but it is their livelihood. You see a lot of the things that we're wearing. They are things that they make, and that is their livelihood for bringing income into their homes. And in the back there you see a table, and they had things that we could purchase that would be a direct benefit to their women. But then in the front, what we are also doing is the Illinois group brought some quilts over besides the Beanie Babies that we gifted to the children. And we shared other things. So we are right there working on presenting those things to those women. Kanani.
So as we talked about, several of us went to different parishes. So myself and Skoglins got to worship at Kanani. Kanani is not too far out, so we didn't have to travel a long distance to get there. As you see, it's kind of, it's a fairly nice building in comparison to some of the others, but no longer is this building big enough. They now need to build another building that's bigger. When I first saw this 3 years ago, when I first went over, the back part of this building was incomplete. It was still in process for the pastor's office. It was kind of a two-part apartment. You know, we could actually look into the sanctuary from this little crack in the wall because of the way they were putting up the concrete. And now that part's finished, and they're like, all right, we need to build more. We need to build a bigger building because we have more people coming to worship here to fulfill the needs. Again, as you see, Kanani has 2 choirs. As you hear, a lot of these places have more than one choir. And we just think that was fantastic that they had that many people. And not all the choirs had a lot of people. Sometimes it was a choir of 9, but it was a choir. So they, I believe this was the day we visited on a whole, and the choir sang for us the entire time we ate. They stood there, they would dance or they would sit, but they would completely sing for, 2 hours? And then when we finished eating, we did kind of a sing-off. They sang, we sang. They sang. We tried not to sing, but they still made us sing. They have is this the Sunday school or is this the school? This is the kindergarten. So again, most of the sanctuaries are multi-purpose rooms. The mission of the church is not just spiritual education, but it's also normal education. And so this is a kindergarten that congregates in the sanctuary on the weekdays. And so we got to come in. Take note of the little boy by Pastor Matt that's on the floor with a drum. He has the best sense of rhythm I have ever heard in a kid. They would do stuff and he'd keep rhythm on the drum, or they would sing and he would just kind of freestyle. He was fantastic. I believe I heard one of our groups like, we need to get that boy a real drum. He was really good, and so it's just a gift. This is the bathroom. As Margaret said, buildings are separate. Did they have a kitchen at Kanani? Is that in the way back? So like equivalent to if our kitchen was separated like Kanani, basically where the playground is. It was kind of the distance of their kitchen from their sanctuary. There it is. And I believe they were wanting to build a new, bigger kitchen too, right? And that would become a parsonage? Yeah, so, they want to be able to provide housing for their evangelists, for people to visit. So they're always constantly seeking to grow more because they know if they aren't investing in growing bigger, then they're going to dwindle down. So it just blew us away how they constantly, they just finished building one thing, on to the next. So it was really fun to worship there. Skoglins and I, we spoke for, when we stood up and introduced ourselves, we said, greetings on behalf of Christ the Servant Church in our home in Norfolk, Nebraska. For them, we don't just represent ourselves, we represent you guys. And so it was an honor to be able to take that name and say, greetings from our family back home.
I just want to explain something. You hear us talking about pastors and evangelists. I just thought of this with Brian. They have 2 pastors. One pastor lives right there. The other pastor lives 60 miles away. It takes an hour to get there. There's 2 pastors and 5 evangelists. So when we're at all these sub-parishes, it's not an actual pastor preaching, it's an evangelist that is preaching. So when we talk about that, so you saw 1,600 people there the first Sunday. There's several people, hundreds of people at all of these parishes. So there's only 2 pastors that are pastoral, and then they're evangelists who take on some of that pastoral responsibility, but they cannot marry and they cannot perform funerals. So in a sense would be like what Charlie is, an assisting pastor. But so just so you guys can kind of think about that in all these locations. Mandaka Emmanuel was an hour away from where we were at, from Center. So.
I just wanted to tell you a couple of things about the music. You all know that I love music. And I was just absolutely amazed at the choirs that they had. There were sometimes some of them that were, 25, 30. And they would get up and they would sing and dance. And I learned so much about that. For instance, the dancing is their attempt to communicate. Sometimes there are just no words to express their joy and their invitation to you and the love they feel towards you. Everything that is done directs you back to the church and back to God. So when they would sing from their heart. First of all, they sang with no music. It was all up here. They had no accompanist. They had their director who would stand up, and he would go, doo, 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 and they'd have their pitch, and they would take off just like that. The singing was for the pure joy of it and the communication. We have some tapes that we will, bring and have you listen to it. Several years ago, there was a recording company that came and recorded them because of the beauty of their music and the message that they had. But the singing and dancing, it's their way of introducing you to the Lord that they love.
Okay. Taref is where Mama Louie works. Mama Louie, like Margaret said, is one of the main contacts that's over there for us. She's also the wife of the house that I stayed at, and where Dad has stayed at every time that he's gone over. TAREF stands for Tanzania Women Research Foundation. This is right when you walk in their building. They have actually just moved into this building. Mama Louie is right next to Margaret. Oh, pointers. And then Lightness, I know, is over on this far end over here, and then in the red. And then the other lady who works there, and it was actually the head person, and we cannot for the life of us remember her name, is standing over, you can see just her head behind me. But she was kind of the head honcho while we were there. But at their center, it was registered in 2010, and they currently employ 19 people, and they have 30 grassroots volunteers. And if I looked that up correctly, it's people who come from abroad and volunteer their time to work here. Just real quick, because I'm not sure that anyone necessarily knows what that is or what TAREF does. The Sunday school has been giving their offerings for 3 years to go towards TAREF. It's called Women's Research, but they work a lot with orphans and kids too. They have a 4-year plan that they were able to share with us from 2016 to 2020, where they are planning on, this is their exact wording, so if it sounds a little funny, I apologize, but conducting research to inform interventions, investments, and policy, facilitating sustainable access, livelihoods such as shelters, microfinance, social services, education, healthcare, and referrals for care and treatment of HIV. And then their third goal is providing, I can't read that, providing services to empower women, girls, and communities against FGM, child, early, and forced marriages. So it is a third world country. The last day that we were there, one of the girls happened to just make the comment of, we are a third world country. And I don't know about for anyone else, but for me, it wasn't even crossing my mind that that's where we were because of how well we were taken care of. But it very much is a third world country. So it's rough over there in some spots. While we were there, Mama Louie was going out to a school and doing HIV testing for students. This is one of the things that they need funding for to be able to keep this going, because they had probably twice as many kids as they were planning on. I don't remember the exact number she said, but it was between kids and their families, they had 250. And I want to say they were closer to 150 is what they were planning on. And it is truly because the kids were dragging their parents to go get this testing done. Education is a huge part of that. Educating the kids on where to get tested, what it means to get tested, how that could change their lives, change their parents' lives, all of that. They also build houses for orphans and children living with people with disabilities. And it's pretty similar to Habitat for Humanity. The houses are not nearly as big. It is literally cement walls and 2 rooms. They're small. It is literally just to have a solid foundation as opposed to the dirt and sticks that they could possibly be living in. While we were there talking about it, Margaret actually was able to help suggest something for them, because that was one of the things they said they were having problems with, was funding to be able to keep these things going. So Margaret actually was able to suggest sweat equity, like what Habitat for Humanity does. So hopefully that's something they're going to be working into, so that the people who get the houses will actually work more to keep them, because they have to put something into getting the houses. So hopefully that'll help them in the process. They had 2 struggles that they pointed out to us. One, like I said, was a sustainable source, a little response from the communities in the cost sharing for housing, making the houses, helping support the people who get the houses, all of those things. And they don't have bathrooms in them either. It's literally just the houses. So they need bathrooms and stuff like that. And they are also struggling with sustainable source of income for running the office. So it is very much a service organization, and they give way more than they get. NGO is what it is. Non-government organization. So, like nonprofit organizations is. So, Habitat for Humanity, probably a good thing to look up, but they do so much more than just the houses. They do all the testing and the education too.
Big 5. This is one of the big 5. We went on safari while the team was climbing, and so we had that opportunity to do that. And so our goal was to see the big 5, which is elephant, rhino, lion, as you can see, leopard. Can you see him? He's resting in the tree up there. This guy, where's Waldo, sort of deal. Right there. Water buffalo and the black rhino. And that was a rare thing to see, because especially on the first trip. So we were pretty fortunate to get to see all 5. But it was a very nice trip, and we had a lot of fellowship among the buses. But I think we had 2 of them. 3 buses. So it was just a nice getaway type thing. So, yep.
This is my Mama Heike. She is my host mother. She is widowed. She is an evangelist. Everywhere she goes, she was preaching and telling these kids to study, but she is also a earth person. I don't know what you call it, herbalist. She had me drinking that red stuff called Rosella. Oh, it was so good. But she is an awesome woman. I would catch her just going out on her veranda, just praying, walking. She'd go out and cook outside all the time. She was just praying and dancing, but she's a lovely, lovely woman. She's a godly woman. She was not afraid to share. So, who's next? Oh, Sweet Talks.
This is our host family, is Romel and Bertha Moshi, or Moshe. And then 2 of their daughters, Nema and Mercia, are there with us. They have 2 other kids that are a little younger. I don't know if there's Christian, Chris, and then Brigitta, or Bridget. And that was their 2. Then they have 1 older son, Hans, that I don't know if he got in any of the pictures. but Romel is also the owner of the travel company that we did the climb and the safari through. So he was able to work on lining that up for us. So, and Bertha is his partner with that also. So.
This is the Mfangavo's house. Mama Louise down there. Her daughter got married the weekend after we left. Side note, weddings over there, so much better than weddings here, and I was so sad that I couldn't go. So she was running around constantly. So they were looking for pictures with her, and I'm like, we would come home and we'd eat and go to bed, and we'd get up and she'd drop us off and go. So this is their house. Their house that we stayed in is actually over on this right-hand side. They have a garage with a gate, which got locked every night. And then they have the main room, a kitchen, a living room, and 4 bedrooms in there. Then they also have, over on the other side, is a guest house, which they were refurbishing, which eventually they will move into and then rent their house out, as it's too big for them with their last daughter getting married. But yeah, she works at Taraf. She works, like I said, with the kids, so she's constantly busy. Her husband is there too. He was a professor. I, for the life of me, cannot remember his name. He was Babu or Grandpa. I wasn't allowed to call them like mom or dad, like it was Grandma and Grandpa, because they're dad's mom and dad. But yeah, they were just constantly go, 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 but also extremely wonderful family. For those who are hesitant about going, I was too. And that's staying with a family that my family has known for years, and a person that I've actually met coming over. But I slept perfectly fine. You are welcome to the families. It feels like you've been there forever. It's a really weird sensation to explain. But just know that once you're there, they treat you completely like family. Who's next?
So this is Mchungaji Oforo. He's a former pastor. He is retired. I think at age 60 they are required to retire. They have no choice. They're done at 60. So he is retired. He had worked at the Diocese Center, and he was in charge of Christian education as part of his job at the Diocese Center. And then that's Mama Grace Oforo. She had worked at the hospital for many years. She is also retired. And now she has chickens and cows, and her source of income is the milk that she sells and the eggs that she sells. So there, in the mornings was very busy, and sometimes at night people would be coming and getting milk and eggs, mostly milk. You'd hear, Hody, at the back door, hello, anybody there? And she'd get up and go give them milk and back. Once you have been in Tanzania, Brian and Michela in 2015 stayed with Mchungaji Oforo and his wife. So we are now Oforos in Africa. So we kind of take on their name, and we are their children. So this is my mama and my Mchungaji is what I called them. Mchungaji has actually been to Christ the Servant, I found out. I want to say maybe 15, 20 years ago, he came with a gentleman, Martin Russell, who was with our diocese and with our synod, and he came here, and I vaguely things are bringing me back to remembering him. But when I told him that our pastor is Mchungaji Stephen Lund, he goes, yes, I remember him. So we have a great opportunity. They have family. They lived in Canada for several years, and so they have a son that lives in Canada, and hopefully we're praying everything goes well. They are planning to come here and stay with us at the end of this month to September. So Brian and I have been praying. Getting a passport over there is very difficult, and now they have to have national IDs before they can. So getting out of Tanzania is very difficult. So they're in the process right now. So hopefully, God willing, they will be worshiping here with us sometime hopefully in September. So we are very excited that you will be able to meet Mchungaji Oforo and his wife. And they have 5 children, all grown, and they have 3 grandchildren.
This is our mama, Mary Lee Moo. I've stayed with her all 3 times that I've gone. She is, I don't know, she's very sweet. I love her very much. She has 2 sons, and one of the son's family lives in the compound, so, or whatever you want to call it, it's not that big. But 2 granddaughters that loved us well, and they think Amanda's name is Commanda. Yes. So, but she's wonderful. She used to be in medicine, like mental health type stuff, and she's retired and has her own little shop that she runs. And she used to have chickens at some point and whatnot. So, like many of the other older mamas, but she's very sweet. We love her dearly.
This is the Saleo family. They're half our age. They're 32 years old, and Louise was Bibi Louise, and I am Babu Charlie. That means grandma and grandpa. Because of my age and because of my profession, we kind of had a little elevated status. And I always say I was this much below Elvis while I was over there. This is quite a family. Joshua is an accountant by trade. His wife, Juliet, in the back, she has a degree in business logistics. Now, I don't know what that means, but the kids right there, between Louise and Joshua, that's Brian. Now, that's their nephew. Brian is living with them, and they are raising him as their son because where he comes from, he does not have the opportunity for a school. They have quota systems over there that if there's not so many people in an area, you don't exist. And so where he came from, there wasn't enough to provide a school. And so what do I do for my children who I want to go to school? It's up to you. If you don't want to send them to school, don't. If you want to send them to school, that's your responsibility. Louise is holding Josie, and then the other one over there is Joanne. This family taught me more about hospitality than I have ever learned in my life. They were, everywhere we went, they took care of us. A little story, and some of these I can only explain in a story. If you have ever been to Tanzania, you know that the roads are terrible. I will never complain about potholes again in my life. But we had to drive about maybe 1.5 miles to get to the church. And it's usually just two turns and straight shot there. On the airplane over there, Louise kept saying to me, you know, Charlie, you just got to get some exercise. You've just got to start that. Louise got her wish because 2 days before we got there, the bridge collapsed. So they could only take us so far, but they took us every day, and they built a temporary bridge for us to go across. Now, the temporary bridge would have spaces between the slats by about like this. They would cut off the top part of of a log, and it still had the bark on it, and we would have to walk over it. Now, neither Louise and I are very sure-footed, but they walked us over by hand, and then we watched the motorcycles go across the bridge. The thing is, there wasn't a thing they wouldn't do for us. Every night, the kids would get together and they would sing a song. They would have a Bible study, and Babu and Bibi were expected to be part of that. The last night that we were there, we came from our farewell dinner, so to speak, and the kids were hiding in the back of the car so they could make sure that they saw us. I mean, it's just things like that. We were invited to go to a engagement party on Joshua's sister's. His youngest sister became engaged. And so we went to his father's home, which was in the Rambo district. And his father had been a pastor for 43 years, and again, because of age requirements, retired. So this is the setup. They were getting all set up for the engagement party. That is the bride, or the bride-to-be in the pink dress, and her intended in the white shirt. Now, the families are divided. The husband's side and the bride's side, guests in the middle, with the couple right there clear towards the back. Now, there are prayers, there are songs, but what happens is there comes a point where the bride and groom are separated and negotiations take place. They go off into the house, and all of the future husband's family goes over there. But nobody from the bride's family goes over there, except a chosen aunt or an uncle. Because they say that they don't believe that the parents of the bride really have her best interest at heart. Because daddy's going to want to keep his little girl home, and mom's going to want to keep a companion. See, they don't believe that always the parents have the best interest of the child at heart. You know, Hillary made famous, it takes a village to raise a child. Tanzanian people did. And so what happens is they go off to negotiate. Everything must be right between the clans. All debts must be settled. Everything must be forgiven, because you cannot enter a relationship if you don't have a pure heart. And so negotiations take place. Then they come outside and they announce that this will proceed because the bridge has been built between the two clans and everything is now at peace. So she raises her hand for all the world to see, and he puts the ring on her finger in front of God and in front of everybody. That there's nothing higher than that ring, than their love. And then she shows the ring to everybody, and she is officially engaged. Now, what's really something after this, so this was amazing enough to see, but Joshua also had another sister. Her name is Elizabeth. Elizabeth is living in Germany. Elizabeth is an ordained pastor, and she is working now on her 5th degree. And she came over to Louise and I, and she said, "Are you the people living with Joshua? Are you from Nebraska?" And we said, "Yes, we are." And she said, "Well, I'm so excited to talk to you because I lived for one day in Lincoln, Nebraska." And I said, "Well, that's great." And she said, "But more than that, I lived for a month at Camp Carol Joy Holling in Ashland, Nebraska. Do you know where that's at?" And I said, "Oh, yeah, I sure do." She said, "You know, in the work she does, which is working with the disabled, working with people with AIDS, working with people with physical, mental disabilities, that sort of thing. She says, I thank God every day that I was in Nebraska at Carol Joy Holling because it changed my life and it gave me directions and it gave me a purpose." And she said, "I would give anything to get back in touch with them." So I called them. And I gave them her name, and hopefully they'll be in touch with her. Before we came to church today, like I said, this family, the Saleo family, we've kept in touch with them, and it's only been a week, I know that, but almost every other day they contact us through the WhatsApp application on the phone. Before we came to church this morning, they sent us a Sunday greeting that never forget the God who brought us together. A year ago, I told you that I would never consider doing this. And Brian, I'll never forget him for this. He said that when he left here to go on this trip, there were tears of fear and tears of separation of the people and the things that I knew and loved and was used to. But when we got on that plane to come home, there were tears of joy for knowing the people, but tears because we were leaving them. And I don't know when I'm going to see them again. If you've got a chance, reach out. The oldest person was 75 years old in our team. The next one was 74. Then Louise and I at 64. We didn't do much rock climbing. My idea of climbing was getting out of bed in the morning. But you know what? I wouldn't trade that experience for anything.
And now I have to get up and talk with tears in my eyes after that. This was the part of what the village group did, the prayer brothers and prayer sisters, and connecting with them and making that relationship and that connection deeper. I went over there and I told them, and see, I'm going to start bawling again. As you know, we sent them prayer pockets, prayer shawls, Bible markers. That was my organization of getting everything packed beforehand. And I want to impress, and that's always been my goal, to impress on everybody here that these are real people with real problems, real families, real lives, just like you have. They are real, just like you are real. And we've had the blessing of being able to step into that. We got to the airport. Mama Louie grabs me and she says, "Here, this is your sister." And I looked, because I didn't, it's dark. It's 9 o'clock at night. Mercy! It's my Mercy. And she saw me several times during the trip. But this is Mary's sister, Reminisca.
Yes, this is my sister, Reminisca. I took over some gifts for her. She is a seamstress by trade. That's how she makes her living. Her husband works in Dar es Salaam for the whole month and comes home for one weekend, because this is how he can only get a job there. But she's raising her two boys, which are 12 and 10. She took me to her house. It was a beautiful house. They're building it, like Margaret said earlier. They only build when they have the money. They don't take out loans like we do. But I took over gifts, and I didn't know what to take. So, through all my praying and spending time in Word and stuff, I also sew. So God and Margaret put me together with her. So I filled up a great big Ziploc bag of thread, and I took 4 pieces of fabric that were 3 yards in length that I didn't need, and I handed them to her, and the tears started falling because she needed thread to keep her business going. But she was so humble. Yeah, we needed a translator, but the third time we met, we could tell each other just by our gestures what we each wanted each of us to pray for. She's such a beautiful, godly woman, and humble describes her. Her home was it was a hard shock for me, but they were happy. They're happy people. I don't know what else to say. They're just, and they love God. They are not afraid to tell you about their God.
Louise, this is your sister. Which one? You have to. Gladness, not Gladys. Gladness. 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 This is one of Michelle's sisters, and her name is Anna. This is a second sister. She acquired a second sister while we were over there. What's your second sister's name? Eleowinga. Okay. Okay. So she cleans at the church. And Anna is a teacher. Mm-hmm. This is Tara, and then also Susie Lutz's, that's a long story, sister, Rahema. This is my Mercy. And I have two sisters. I did not get to meet my second one, Safi Niali, but Mercy caught me many times. This is one of Amanda's sisters, and it's Angelita. And this, yes, this is Deanne's sister, and this is Mama Mary Limo, who is the mama to Emily and Amanda. And this is Emily Deal and her, oh my goodness, Rose Ntui. And then Becky has two sisters, and little did I know till we got over that Becky's two sisters are sisters. This is Mchagaji, or Pastor Shao's wife, Julieth. And then I don't know if we have the second picture, but her sister Eunice Msela, which is a wife to, no, not wife to Warren's, Pastor Steve. Your brother, his wife is Eunice, and Eunice is a sister to Julieth. And so Becky has two sisters, but we didn't realize the two sisters were sisters. So that was kind of cool. Brian has a brother in Evangelist Peter Morrow. And then if you actually look behind Peter, you see his wife, Naima. Naima is the word for grace. But Naima is a sister to Susan Thompson. And that's probably the most of them of who we actually met. So, and then we met a lot of your sisters. I've got lots of information coming of updates. I'm also looking for more prayer sisters and prayer brothers. And so if you're interested, please let me have your name and we will proceed to get connections made. You know what? I'm sorry. I have to tell you something. Charlie kind of shared this last Sunday about how serious the prayer brothers and prayer sisters are to them. I was visiting with one of the women. It might have been Heike. And all of a sudden, I see a woman standing over in the pastor's office doorway. And all at once, she's coming straight at us. And she had come the day before. She wanted a prayer sister. I ran out of prayer sisters. I remember I said I'm looking for 10 extra names a couple Sundays before we left. I ran out of sister names. We paired up more sisters, and I had another 30 to 40 women coming to me for prayer sisters. This woman had come the day before. I got all her information. She came back the next day. She says, I do not have my prayer sister's name yet. Do you have it for me yet? No. I have to go back to America. I want to pray for a woman in America. That's how eager they are. So, I ask you, please consider to be a prayer sister or a prayer brother. They're very eager to be praying for us.
We had a great prayer sister situation develop while we were in Tanzania too. Our Mama Oforo, Mama Grace, who we stayed with, is a prayer sister with Michelle's biological mother, Shirley Tile. So her mama and her mama are prayer sisters together. So it's really a cool thing. I want to take a few minutes here to talk about BCC. And of course, that was the primary reason for the climb. All the funds raised per mile are going to the BCC for sustainability funds to help them with daily operation, to pay their teacher, to pay their electric bill, to pay for food, just to make sure that the center stays in operation. So we want to show you some pictures inside, some of the kids, of what's happening there at the BCC. Now, kind of take you back to 2014 for just a minute. This is the old BCC. Actually, you're looking at a building that houses the BCC and the SACOS, which is the kindergarten and preschool. Over on the right-hand side is where the SACOS is. Oh, the bank, okay. Well, the school is on the right-hand side there. And the left-hand side was the BCC. And the next picture here takes you inside. The old BCC was a one-room, probably about the size of the back office here, what used to be Pastor Matt's office. You go inside of that, that's probably the size of the old BCC. And they only had enough room to maybe have about 6 or 7 kids in there throughout the day. But they had a need to have 30 kids. Within their parish, they have at least 30 kids who are disabled, mentally or physically or both. And so in 2015, we went back and helped them to start to build the new BCC building. And so this is the group that was there. And when we left, this is the picture that we took, right? That was the last day of working. It was just a foundation. And so it really was amazing for those of us that were there to build, to go back and to walk on the property and to walk in the building and just take a look around and see how everything looked. Now, that only took 3 months to build, and this is what the center looks like now. Christ the Servant, BCC Center. And so you can see there's a ramp in the front. The old BCC did not have, it had steps. And so if you had a child that was in a wheelchair, you would have to lift them out of the wheelchair and carry them into the building. And so now we've got a wheelchair ramp that's there. They had to share restroom facilities with the rest of the parish, which had steps to get up into. And the BCC now has their own separate restroom areas. We'll show you a picture of that. They got its own separate, like a sleeping area. There is a kitchen area. There's an office area, all in here, and it just is amazing. And they now have the capabilities of hosting those 30 kids. The times that we were there, they had about 14 to 15 there at one time. And so this is just the outside of the building there. You can see their water tank that they have up on the top there. And so inside of the building where you're looking, it's Becky there on the right, looking inside the kitchen and the office area there. So here's inside of the main classroom area. And again, you've got all the students that are lined up in there, probably 14 to 15 students with helpers and with teachers there as well. So here's their kitchen area that they have, and they don't have any tables in the kitchen area because they took all the tables out of the kitchen and moved them under the tent for all of us to sit at when we had our meal time. This is their area where now they can go and actually wash their hands before they go to meals, or after they've used the restroom, they can wash their hands there, or they can do any kind of washing that they might need to. These 4 doors that you're looking at there are the new restrooms, and so they have 4 different rooms that have different restrooms that would be in there. I'm going to take you inside the one that's on the farthest. That is a handicap accessible. They did not have handicap accessible restrooms before, but they do now, where you can roll a wheelchair in and there's more room to move around in there. So very nice restroom facility. This is another one with a squatty potty in there. So they've got 4 different rooms, and I think that is a shower that's in there too? Okay, and it looks like that has a magic switch. So that might take cold water and kind of make it somewhat lukewarm. Otherwise, it was cold showers. So here's some pictures of our team interacting with the kids. We had a couple of different days where we got to go in and meet the kids and talk to them and kind of watch them learn. They were singing songs to us. And it just was an amazing experience for all of us to go in there and interact with them. And of course, they welcomed us with great joy. I mean, you walk right in and they come at you with their arms out and they're ready to hop in your lap and make some friendships. Rolling balls around. I think that soccer ball rolled around for 15 minutes or so that day that we were there. There's Pastor Matt with another one. And so the next 2 slides that I got for you just are a couple of brief videos. Hopefully this isn't too loud, but this is some actual teaching. So you're going to see a couple teachers in the front, and you're going to see all the students in the back, and the teacher is asking questions, and the students are raising their hands, and they're learning along with this.
Leo ni Jumatatu, si ndio? Jana ilikuwa sasa kuna leo Jumatatu. Jana ilikuwa siku gani? Mmesikia? Jana ilikuwa Jumapili. Kama ilikuwa Jumapili, mlifanya nini? Hebu niambieni cha kwanza kabisa jana Jumapili mlichofanya. Kwenda kanisani. Mmesikia? Jana
The 2 teachers that you're looking at in the front, the one on the right with the blue shirt, her name is Janet. And the one on the left, her name is Very Nice. And so you can see all the kids really getting interactive there. There are some kids that, thanks to the work of the BCC, have graduated on to go to kindergarten and move on to primary school thanks to the work of the BCC there. And they're also working through a lot of physical disability as well, so they're exercising them on a regular basis, and they're making some miraculous improvements thanks to the work of the teachers there. One more little quick video here for you. They actually were singing a song for us one day. Did you catch the tune? Okay, Mary had a little lamb. And so that's what they do during their day. And obviously they have some playtime and interaction time, but there's also learning time and singing time. It is just an amazing facility that they have there. So again, all the money that was raised through the climbing part goes to that center directly. None of it goes anywhere else, but it goes right to that center to help with sustainability, to pay for the teachers and to pay for, transportation needs for the kids, for their food, for electricity, any needs for the BCC. Okay, who's talking about women's ministry?
Just want to touch briefly on the women's ministry. That was one of the groups that we met with, and our goal was just to support these women in their ministry and what they do within the church and how they support the church. When we were at the main center, some of the things they were able to bring, the things that, you're going to see some of us wearing various things. They're things that the women made and we were able to purchase. Do we have any pictures? Yes. Actually, you'll see the tent, that tent behind there where we had talked about, we ate most of our meals. But as you can see, they're sitting up there, they are sewing. Mary took her sewing along. She's sewing right along with them. Mary brought her quilt out. They kind of all looked at that and admired that. And just now, as you see there's in the front, there's some purses. There are some clothing. There are some pictures. Those pictures that have the little black frame around them, can't see them real close, but those are made out of dried banana leaves.
There is one at the back table that you can see.
There is, Mama Heike has, and I don't know if we got another picture, but Mama Heike had some of her lemongrass and her dried rosemary and her parachichi dried seed, which is avocado, because of the health benefits of those, and they had them for sale. Those are the wares, those are the things. See Mary Wyke up there? Okay, Mary's got her quilt on her lap that she's working on, but see to the left of her, or our right, you see something that's kind of tall and brown? That is like a mat that you would put on your floor made out of dried banana leaves, if I remember correctly, rolled up. There's also some, they're kind of small. See the little rings? There's little rings down below the banana. Those are some of the things they can put on their heads when they put their weight of their items that they carry on their heads. They a lot of times will have a ring on their head to distribute the weight. So they were able to share a lot of those things with us and what they work on and what are their livelihood, that they can help to bring income into their homes. I will be going to our women's group, but I think we're working on ways. One of the needs of the women's ministry over there was they had voiced needing sewing machines. And they would be sharing the sewing machines. And these are the sewing machines that you treadle with a foot. They can also have a motor attached to them for an extra fee. And then also they voiced what we would call a serger or an overlock machine, so that those seams could be self-contained. So those are things, those are ways we're hoping we can help support that women's ministry. They also, at Medaka, the main parish, they make soap on a regular basis. And they put it into the water bottles. We all got to help make soap. You got to stir it, I think it was 18 minutes, wasn't it? Of continuous stirring. And so we all got a hand in there stirring that pot of soap. But that is one, and Charlie even got in on it too. We all got in, and they sell that. Sometimes they will sell that at some of their auctions after church on Sunday also. And there's some of the sewing machines, like, where was this taken out? Okay. Okay, so this is Mary's sister, Reminisca, and this is it a treadle one or is it electric?
It's a treadle sewing machine, and she can make it run so smooth. It's beautiful. They do have the wire in their windows, no glass yet, they're saving their money. The floors in their house are still dirt, but they were pretty clean dirt floors. But she makes beautiful clothes, and it's all by word of mouth. She can't afford to advertise or anything, but yeah, this is her house. They're in the process of building it.
So I know that's one thing that we can hope we can support them. And that was that's why we took some of the Illinois group made some quilts, very simple quilts, that we took over for them to distribute amongst their neediest. All right. And now we are on to the climb.
We're all getting up.
I think first we'll just go kind of through what the days looked like, and then we'll just share more. We'll start the first couple days here. This was before we left, just taking a picture with all of us, and the picture with the kids from the center, just a reminder of why we were doing it and why we were starting. In our big group before we left, you can probably pick out all of us white people. The guy in the front, his name is Jeffrey. He's one of the evangelists at the church. And then, with his tongue out. Next to Matt is Romel. He is the owner of the tour service. And then behind him is Pastor Shao. And they all climbed with us. This was just signing into the gate. Each camp we reached, we signed in our name, all of our information, mostly probably so they could keep track of us to make sure we didn't get lost on the mountain. So that was just getting ready to go. And this was before we started up the hill. We were past the line before we started walking the line of no return. These are two of our guides. On the left-hand side is Richard, and then Andrew is on the right. They were amazing guides. They actually pulled Andrew out of retirement to come guide us up the mountain just because they wanted to take care of us well, and they knew he was going to do a good job of that. So they were incredible and supportive all the way up. And this is just day one, going through the rainforest. It was, there are maybe some flat areas, but it was pretty much stair-stepping all the way up. There's, if you can see the guy on the right, that's, probably a 50-pound pack on his back. That's one of the porters. I'm assuming there's a picture later, but for 10 of us climbing, we had 26 some odd porters. So just the comparison is they carried our stuff, they carried our tents, all the food. So we would start off the day, and then about half an hour later, they would all shoot up, and we were going slowly, and they would just, no sweat, just go right on us, past us. This is what we lovingly call the internet cafe, otherwise the bathroom. No Wi-Fi. Yes, that's what Richard called it, one of our guides. This was just another stop, probably stopping for the bathroom, taking drinks of water again. And then this is our first camp. It says we're at 2,835 meters. We were just, when we arrived at camp, it was the end of the day, into the clouds, and it got cold very quickly and wet, very wet. Mm-hmm. Those are our tents. You can see me hunching down there. The porters, every time we got to a tent, everything was set up. The mess tent where we ate all of our meals was ready. It was, and it always amazed me. They knew you're in this tent, you're in this. They knew our bags, even though they all looked the same. But they, were very good. That's our mess tent. So our table is in there for meals. And the toilet tent, the cho. We had a little portable toilet, Western toilet, that way we didn't have to go use the squatties, even though it would have been fine. Before most meals, we had buckets for washing our hands off or face, whatever you needed, and I was just stretching after that day. And then these are most of our porters. Before we left the second day, they sang us songs to send us off.
And this is day 2. As you can see, it's getting steeper. We're still in some of the rainforest. Just depends on the type of terrain we're going. Another break here we're taking. Emily's busting a gut on something there. Anyway, but here a lot of the time we sidestep the trail. We'd say Porter on the right, Porter on the left. We'd make room for them to buzz by us, because they were going at a faster pace. So, but he's carrying his own pack of 30 pounds plus whatever's on top of that on his shoulders and head of anywhere from 30 to 40, 50 pounds on top of that, and just bounding up the mountain like there's nothing. So, but we were in awe of them, and there's more there. Continued rainforest. We're getting higher, working our way out of the clouds here slowly. There's part of our path we have to go up, so we're just every time I stop to take a picture is where we were going and where we came from, so you can see the elevation of where what we're having to walk through. More trails that we're leading up. As you can see, there was a lot of other people. There were several other climbing groups that were on the mountain at the same time, so each camp we would go to, there'd be several different colored tents, and that was all the different groups. So you always had your same colored tent to go to also, but that was one of our narrow ways we had to crawl up there. That was the group that was in front of us, so we were waiting for them to get up, and then we started. So, and then here we're enjoying the top side of the clouds. It was a sea of clouds that once we got above them, it was just an awesome sight to see that always. And then this is our second camp, the end of second day. We got into the Shira Cave camp, 3,750 meters. And so that was a tough day for a couple of us. And yeah, here's day 3. So that's the mountain in the distance. So more of our trails are out of the, we're getting to the alpine desert, out of the rainforest. So a lot more rocks, more gravel, more, just desert type terrain. It was relatively warm during the day, in the low 70s, so it was comfortable. There'd be a slight breeze here and there, but the mountain was always in view. That was you could always see our target goal. So this is Lava Tower. This was on day 3. To acclimate you to the altitude. The goal was climbing high, so Lava Tower was a higher altitude than where we started, but then after we got here, we climbed back down to the next camp, or hiked down to it, so you could sleep at a lower altitude. It was supposed to help you sleep and get used to the altitude. And so here after Lava Tower, here comes the down. And then the up. So, but this was looking back at Lava Tower where we were coming from. And then here we were at Bronco Camp. We were at one narrow point above this camp, and Andrew, our guide, goes, "Look, right down there's our camping area." Well, so I zoomed in on it, got the tents, then I zoomed back out, and it was still 2 miles away. 2 hours later, we made it to here. So we were a little wiped out.
Okay, I think this is day 4. And so at the beginning of day 4, you climb what's called the breakfast wall, or the Barranco wall. And so because it's right after you've had breakfast. So you've had breakfast for the day, and you are facing this big wall that you're looking at there. And you can see there's multiple other groups that have to go up this same narrow path up the rocks. And so it is pretty much a vertical climb there. And this was a pretty physical rock climbing part of it. Oddly enough, it was enjoyable. It actually was a lot of fun to go up that. But some of the parts, if you didn't like heights, it was a little harrowing for you up there, which I don't know that any of us had any kind of a fear of heights. We all seemed to be fairly comfortable. If anybody had a fear, they didn't tell each other. This is called the Kissing Rock. You can see why, because it was a very narrow path to get around it. This is Pastor Matt. I wanted to make sure to get a picture of him kissing the rock. And on the other side, you can see Andrew, who was our lead guide, and he was ready to take Pastor Matt's hand on the other side of that to make sure he got through. Actually did that for everybody that went past there. This is a little bit more of a distant look at that pass and at the Kissing Rock there. But that's all part of the Barranco Wall. It was pretty much a straight-up rock climbing experience. Yeah, about 2 hours straight up. And so this is our kind of a celebration picture because we had made it past the breakfast wall, and the guides told us as long as you can get to the top of this, the rest of your time is going to be pretty well flat until you get to the Karanga Valley. So we have a little bit of the Karanga Valley in day 4 here too. Oh, there it is. And so the Karanga Valley is a lot of down, so we probably spent about an hour down, and then we took like a little break at the bottom, and then we had about another hour up to get up to our campsite. So you really didn't change a lot of elevation because you could stand at this big ravine and see your campsite on the other side, but you had to go down this ravine and then back up the other side to get to the Karanga camp. And so if we look a little wiped out in that picture, it's because we are. Because we had just come through the Karanga Valley. I actually was pretty excited because they call me Buana Karanga, which means Mr. Peanut. And I wanted to take a whole bunch of pictures here. I wanted to take pictures by the sign and all sorts of different things. I felt like doing nothing other than just taking a nap when we got back from that. So you can kind of see it on my face there. I'm sitting there in the middle in the blue fleece. It's like, where's my nap? Where's my sleeping mat? Inside the tent, so here's the evening meal that were having there that day at the end of day 4. So this kind of gets you a look inside the mess tent. Our cooks did a fantastic job. We really were very well fed there. The food was awesome. We always had popcorn and peanuts every day and great meals every night. So they were awesome. Okay, day 5.
Now, one thing I want to express is we learned early on when our guide came in at night to explain the terrain we would do. You know, the first night he's like, and then it's going to get steep. We all noticed his hand and we thought, haha, that's funny. He wasn't kidding. And so Karanga Valley was one of those like, oh yeah, it goes level and then you get to camp. We thought, oh, please may that be you arrived at camp. No, it was you climbed upwards to get to camp. The fifth day, 4th day? 5? Day 5, okay. This was actually a shorter day compared to the others, mainly because we were getting ready for the mountain peak. So we left Karanga Camp to head to Barafu. And it was, you still went up, but it was nothing like the Barranco Wall. It was no Karanga Valley. It was just, you kind of just continued to mosey on up. It was getting a bit colder as we were getting up higher. We were above, camp was 14,000 feet at this point. The mountain peak is 19,000 feet. So we were up pretty high, and we continued going up higher. Yep. So we just had to walk that path and get to the camp there. However, distances are deceiving. And as close as things looked, seemed to be always that much further, or another ridge, or you just always had to keep going. But, as mentioned, we just always had gorgeous views of the mountain. As you see the rocks, the terrain, smooth and not smooth at the same time. I don't know how that's possible, but it really was. It was very smooth and very bumpy. The air was kind of dry. There was no humidity. And so, if you blew your nose, you were blowing rock chunks out. Just was what you accumulated from walking behind people and in this dry air. So it's kind of a blatant truth. One thing I wanted to point out, if you've noticed our signs, there are names and different elevations and different hours. Each sign has the mileage and the estimated time to get to those locations. So that bottom one, you'll see Ahuro Peak. It's only 5 kilometers from camp. So this is the last camp from the peak. And so it would say an estimate time. So on our first gate, the Machami Gate Road marker would have had all the estimated time, and I think it was like 40 hours. If you'd walked 40 hours straight from there to the peak, that's the estimated time. We don't know by whose standards, because we sure didn't keep track with that time frame, but they had that on each marker. And so you knew how far you were from the camps ahead of you. And so on this day, when we got to camp pretty early, because it was a shorter, I think it only took 3 hours to get to Barafu, which we had been usually doing 5 to 9 hour walking trips in a day. And so we got to Barafu early, and they're like, okay, we want to make you guys aware of the path, so we want you to take you up this rock face that you will be going through essentially that night, because we would start climbing at 11 p.m. that night. And so Brian and I, we had been kind of struggling at this point, so we elected to actually just stay back and rest at camp. But the rest of our team, if you see the people kind of going up, there's kind of a rock face and a pretty steep climb before you get to kind of a leveled field. That's not even part of the mountain. That's just the area to get to the mountain path. And so, as I mentioned, we started climbing at 11 p.m. So the rest of the day you spend resting, eating. I believe we had an earlier supper that night, so then we could rest. You don't rest when you're going into something big as I'm going to go climb a mountain peak. But you did your best. They gave us snacks to take with us so we could have things for energy. And at 11, the moon's out, and it was shining, and it wasn't really that cold. I mean, each night was cold, but not unusually cold. So you started out with high hopes of, oh, this isn't going to be bad. When the moon went away and the sun had not come up, it got bone-chillingly cold up there. The wind was really biting. It's dark. It's cold. It was a very, very difficult climb to get to the peak. Other people want to elaborate on it?
Want to elaborate on the peak?
Yeah, it was cold. I could sense, you got your headlamps on and you're concentrating on the ground. You want to make sure your foot is solid before you take your next step. But you're only basically moving your heel to toe. That was the length of your steps. So 12 inches at the most. And then you concentrated on the heels in front of you so that you knew which way you're going. So you could follow the guide and the next person in front of you. But as you're getting out of the rocky area, getting into the snow, you can see the jagged edges of snow. Probably the last 2 hours, maybe, you were stepping in all this rough, icy, jagged snow, making sure your foot was in there before you stepped up, and so you didn't slip and fall. And praying a lot to Jesus to help us, give us the power to make it. But we wish we had more pictures, but it was dark, and you were concentrating on other stuff. So
Pictures.
yeah, you don't want to take pictures because you're going to fall off the side anyway. But yeah, it was tough. And then the higher you got, I could notice the wind started picking up. So I go, we've got to be getting close. We're getting close. The wind is picking up. So we get to Stella Point, which is 1 point below Uhuru. We get there, and we're all tired, and we go, okay, we're done. And the guides grab us. We're going the rest of the way. So anyway, another, hour and a half later, roughly, we get to Uhuru. But it was, it was tough. It was cold, it was windy, but it was satisfying. So, you have anything else? Or? No.
Just to explain a little bit of the terrain, we probably got to the snow level about 2-3 hours into climbing. I'm trying to think of but before that, it was a constant path of kind of like a serpentine, areas where it was loose gravel and super steep. And so there's many times where I fell, various reasons, but I fell, and it would take 2 people to get me back up on my feet. Due to you're cold, your toes are numb, We all had walking poles, which were a godsend because your own feet weren't enough to stabilize yourself. You had to have these poles. And so the terrain was always moving up, but always kind of in this serpentine manner. It wasn't a straight, one up here. It was, you serpentine here, you get here, you look, you see light, and you're like, oh, it's the top of the ridge. You get there and realize, no, there's like 6 other ridges before. And you just get to that point of hope of like, I'm getting to the last ridge. And your hope would always be dashed because there would always be another ridge or another turn or another. And we started earlier. Most of the rest of the teams there would start at 12 a.m. We started an hour earlier just because we needed that extra help. As we've mentioned, Andrew, our guide, was always hand in hand with Pastor Matt, just keeping him going. Matt was ahead of us all times, and usually the people who struggled the most got put up front, where the guides could kind of keep you moving along. So it was hard. Up to Stella Point, you didn't really feel, you felt cold, but you didn't feel the wind. When you got to Stella Point, the wind hit you in full force. So it's completely dark, the moon is gone, the sun's not up, it's completely miserable conditions. And you just get to a point as a person where you're weighing, is this really worth it? Is it worth this misery? Is what we're doing worth suffering through this pain? Because it's physically uncomfortable, it's mentally uncomfortable, and emotionally you're already a wreck because you haven't slept and you're climbing at these uncomfortable times. But then from the beginning, we said we weren't climbing this mountain for us. It wasn't about us. And for me, it just kind of hit home that the kids we are climbing for, which you see, we're holding pictures, we took the kids with us to the peak. We're holding pictures of all the different students, of the teachers. We took them with us. They live this kind of struggle each day. They don't get to just go home to comfortable beds, indoor plumbing, warm showers. They live a struggle each and every day. And if they can do it, so could I, because I'm doing it for them. I have more physical capacity than they can, and it's only a short time of my life. It was a long 7 days, but it was only 7 days. These kids, some of their difficulties will never go away in their lifetime. And in some ways that makes them stronger than us because they endure the long haul, whereas we can endure for a short amount of time. And I want to be truthful, I almost didn't make it there. If it was my own choice, I would have backed down a long time ago because I couldn't breathe. And I actually kept passing out on the mountain peak, which is not a very safe thing to do. But instead of the guides saying, oh, you're a wussy, go back to camp, they're like, nope, get you on your feet, keep you moving, keep you going. I mean, there was times where they would physically take me and do exercises to get me to breathe. And it just highlighted my weakness and part of my pride. It's just kind of like, oh, I feel so bad because I'm slowing our team down and I'm doing this. But then you gotta remember, it's not about me. Even my weaknesses, it's not about me. And so if I could keep moving forward, I could. And actually right before the peak, it's kind of funny, when we talked amongst each other, there was a part where I lost visual of our team. I was walking behind, it was slow. I had a couple extra porters with us that stayed with me to keep me on my feet. And at one point, Emily, she thought I had gone back down the mountain because they hadn't seen me. Yet when we got to where this sign is, and we got there as sunrise is coming. So the dawning has broke. There's hope on the horizon. But when the sun's there, she looks over and she sees me sitting by them. And she's just like, how'd you get here? And it was my goal. I wanted to get there with the rest of my team. No matter how hard it was, no matter how painful it was, no matter how darn tired I was, I just wanted to sit on those spikes and sleep. Didn't care if they were pokey. My goal was to get there with my team because our team was doing this for our new family in Tanzania. So the fact that I'm in that picture is kind of a miracle because it was extremely hard and I wanted to turn back and I didn't. And I'm glad I didn't because it just showed that through God we can do more things than we can even possibly conceive.
You'll notice that I'm not in that picture. And so I'll tell you more about my struggle here in just a minute. But next here, and take a look at this video. This is video that Lonnie took from the peak. So kind of a 360 panoramic view from the top of Kilimanjaro. You see all the people lining up there to take a picture. And there's a slip. So how many people are wondering how cold was it up there? About 30 to 40 below wind chill, according to reports. And so you notice that I wasn't there, and I wasn't at the peak. And my struggle began on day 2. And so it was a lot of up. It was like 4,000 feet we went up day 1, 3,000 feet day 2. And so we'd gone up 7,000 feet, started at 5, so by the end of day 2, we were already at 12,500 feet, I think, by the end of the day. And so during day 2, I had developed acute mountain sickness. And so I was feeling nauseous. I actually was seeing colors. I was feeling very weak and very tired. The main thing that I was affected by was I was really, really tired. I just wanted to sit down and take a nap. And so a lot of times whenever we'd sit and take a break, I would sit down and just kind of put my head on my poles and just drift off to sleep for a couple of minutes. I did end up getting sick on day 2 because of the altitude sickness. But after that, on day 2, wasn't affected that way. I didn't get sick the whole rest of the way, but I still felt tired the entire time because of the altitude. And different people become affected in different ways, and it's just the makeup of your chemistry and of your body of how that happens. I just ended up developing the acute mountain sickness, and I was the only one out of the group that didn't make the peak, and that was a really tough thing. I'm still dealing with that. But let me tell you about summit night, because I had made, after day 2 and I got sick and was seeing colors and things like that. The other days I didn't necessarily see colors or become dizzy or feel nauseous. I was just really sleepy. And so I kept pushing and kept going farther. And I know many of us here know Mchungaji Babu Simon. I could hear him in my head. And he would say, he said, keep going. You're getting closer to God. And so I would hear that, and I just push and keep going. And then you would, see pictures of the kids, and you have to keep going. You can't just stop. You can't just quit. You can't give up on something that you set out to do. You've got to push this as far as you can push it. And so we got to summit night, 11 o'clock. We're all leaving. It's cold. And so we're all bundled up, and we've got headlights on, and we're all leaving as a group. And if you remember that big rock face that we had to climb up, we had started to climb up that, and I made it all the way up that rock face. Now, I was towards the back of the group. The rest of the group had kind of kept progressing, but because I was so weak and so tired, I kind of lagged behind a little bit. And there was a guide by the name of Richard that was with me. He stood by me from day 2, basically. He was next to me the entire journey, because if he saw that I was feeling weak or maybe I wasn't feeling well, he would take my pack, and I would just walk and climb without a backpack. And so he went with me on summit night, and we went up this rock face together. I'm taking breaks about every, probably 10 minutes. I'm sitting down, taking a break, and he's like, come on, we got to keep going. And so we'd get up to the top of the rock face, and then we would keep going, and I'd sit down and take a break. And we'd have some of the other porters that would come along, and they would pat me on the back, and they would say, you can do it. You can do this. Just get up. You just got to keep moving. And so I got to a point about 3 hours up into the summit, just before the snow line, and I sat down on this rock, and I must have fell asleep for a couple of minutes, because I remember looking at Richard, and he said, okay, we have to make a choice here. We can try to keep going if you want to, or we can go back down. He goes, but I think that at this point, if you keep going, you're going to pass out. And you're probably going to go into a coma, or something catastrophic could happen right here on the mountain face, and then you possibly might need a mountain rescue. And so at that point, we decided that it was best for me to go back down to the Barafu camp and wait for the rest. And so I remember when we got back down to the camp, I just basically collapsed in his arms and said thank you, for helping me and getting me up and bringing me back. And we went 3 hours up, and it took us about an hour to get back down to the camp. He held my hand the entire way down. And I don't know if you've ever had a point in your life where you feel like you can't go any farther, but it's God that takes you every step of the way. It's not you that's physically doing that. And I think we all felt that way, even getting up to the peak and everything that we were doing. It wasn't us that did this. It was God that did it every step of the way. And so that really was a way that I felt that this wasn't being done under my power. This is only God's power, and this is what keeps us progressing. So that's kind of a little bit of my story.
First thing I came down, I was one of the first people of our group coming down, because coming down was wonderful. Going up was hard. First thing I went to Brian and I said, can I give you a hug, because I'm glad you did not die on the mountain, because it was really hard, and you have that genuine concern of not doing well. So part of me really wished I joined him at camp too.
Okay, so let's go down the mountain, shall we? We went up, and let's go down. This was the part, Amanda and I probably liked this a lot, because for anybody that was getting mountain sickness, going down really makes you feel awesome. And so even though it was hard on our knees and on our legs and on our ankles, and actually the 2 big toes on my feet are actually still numb today, because I was dealing with nerve impingement. And so a couple chiropractic appointments, and things are starting to turn around and be pretty good. But this was really hard on your feet and on your joints going down, because, you saw some of the terrain that we had to climb up going up, and now we had to step down and go down that terrain too. So, yep, go ahead.
There was the one part coming down. You climb up the first path going down, but they send you down a secondary path on the descent. And this had loose rock, dirt, gravel all mixed together, and it's probably anywhere from 8, 10, 12 inches deep. So each time you stepped, your foot would sink and slide away. Next step, sink and slide away. So it was really hard, and you relied on your walking sticks and your balance to try to keep it. But that's what down was harder for me and Emily. That was what we hated, because it was so hard on the legs. That was the toughest. Up was easy, but down was hard for us. Opposite. So it was just, it was just more of the terrain, and it was hard on Pastor Matt also. His legs were fried. Yeah, they were giving out on him, and Andrew held his hand a lot of the time also to get him down. So just for that extra balance and help support.
Now Richard, the guy that was helping me, this is him right here.
Yeah, so that was the other guide.
And then you can see that Andrew is right back here. He's carrying Pastor Matt's pack on his front. So he's carrying a pack on his back.
His own.
Probably 30 pounds. And then he's carrying another.
Yeah. Well, and one thing on the ascent, I'm going back a little bit, about the last hour before we hit Stella Point, all the guides came up to us. Give me your pack. It wasn't a choice. They took our packs so that we were able to get to the top 2. So it was, we were coming down, and this is an ambulance cart. If you were having troubles like Brian and Amanda were, and if you got in serious trouble, they loaded you on one of these little carts, and 4 guys would be at each corner. They would race you down the mountain. And we actually did see one person get taken down as we were partially the way down. It was He was either Japanese or Chinese, Asian, but anyway, he was on the cart, and they were rushing him down because he had altitude sickness. So it was, yeah, they're there for a reason, and they used it. So, and yeah, and the next camp we got to, he was sitting on the bench waiting for the rest of his party to walk down, but he was looking much better than he did on the cart. And this was the camp that we were getting to for the end of day 6. And then this is beginning of day 7. We're heading down and we're getting back into the cloud cover, more vegetation, very wet rocks. It was early in the morning, so all those rocks were covered with moisture from the fog and the clouds. So they were slick, steep, hard to maneuver some of them, and we were tired, our legs were hurting. Our lungs were feeling better, but our legs were hurting. Still steep, but yeah. And then the porters would just zing by us, and this was a rest stop, a camp that's halfway down. It's for a different route that you can choose to climb the mountain on the way up, so this was a different camp that is available there.
We probably had already gone about 3 hours, as you can see here, to get to the gate.
Another 3 hours of, yeah. Back through the clouds, the rainforest, still steep steps, which are getting harder because your legs are so fried, but just, yeah, all your vegetation, but the end was in sight, so to speak. Here we are getting to what is the sort of a road that they made. You know, you take a bulldozer and make a little path. So this was, we're guesstimating 2 to 3 miles long. Anyway, we're walking down this, and out of the jungle pops this little mama with this bundle of vines and reeds and whatever on her shoulder, and she's trudging down the mountain, but she's wearing just flip-flops. And she's going, she's staying ahead of us, and we're getting closer to the last camp, the gate that on the mountain, and she zips back into the rainforest to go back, yeah, and she's going back to her home or whatever, so in flip-flops, in mud, because it was muddy, and so yeah, and this was our last gate that we reached. So, and then that was our greeting party for us, waiting for us to get down there. And there we're trying to look happy, but we're so tired that, yeah, we put on a good face. And you can see it in Matt's face that he's hurting, he's tired, he's sore, but we're all glad to be in one group again. And then we, after that, we all go to our host family, Romel. They threw a celebration for us that we had successfully gotten up and back down off the mountain. So they threw this big feast for us, and these are several of the pictures of us, you know, with the food and the celebration. And
I'm going to show you a quick video next because I want you to experience part of this celebration. They were opening some bottles of non-alcoholic champagne for us, and so I've got a video here of this opening. Can you go turn the volume up? Yeah, so this is Romel. So this is Margaret Lonnie's host family. He also is the one that owns the tour company that we went on a climb and safari with. This is in his yard, and all the porters are there, and we're opening the bottles of champagne. So he's saying that Jeffrey and Micah are going to open one, and he's going to open the other.
don't shake it, Michael.
And Michael opened champagne on behalf of the guests. So you're welcome, Joffrey and Mike.
Micah is shaking.
Coffee.
More singing.
Not your eye. Away from your face.
Not at ours.
now we each had to touch it. Romel's quite a host and quite a showman as well. So what a wonderful time it was. Afterwards, we those that summited, you get a certificate that says you made it. You made it to the peak, and it's actually signed by the park officials. And so we have those. So here's each of us getting the certificates. This is Richard that's handing it to them. He was the guy that was kind of with me and assisting me most of the time. But he also was kind of one of the lead guides there. Now, for me, since I didn't get a certificate, what they did is that they were singing. There was more music that comes with it, and I saw these guys kind of gather around me, and they just lifted me up all of a sudden. So they, just because you made the journey, you made the trek, you just didn't make the point. So the only thing they have that I don't is a certificate. So it's we still kind of get the awesome experience there. And so there's Jeffrey and Pastor Shao getting his, and his uncle actually passed away while we were on the mountain. Pastor Shao's uncle had passed away. So when he got back, he disappeared for a couple of days because he had some family things that he needed to tend to. And then there's Pastor Matt with Andrew. And like Lonnie said, Andrew came out of retirement to help with this special group. Romel had him lined up specially to guide us. And that experience wouldn't have been the same without Andrew. He was just amazing. Okay, and then there's all of our group. That's all the porters. That's everybody who was on the mountain with us. And Mama Louie in the middle.
One thing we figured out on day 6 coming down was we were figuring out all the food that we had to eat. There was always fresh fruit, vegetables, all this other stuff. There was a back way up that we came down. They'd send porters up that back way with fresh food every day. That's how they got it. Or some of these would come down to get it and come back up. And so that was another thing that blew us away. So that was that service that just, yeah.
Okay. So we know we've been talking for quite a while. Hopefully this has been entertaining and you've enjoyed what we said. And this only touches the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot more stories to go with it, so we'd be happy to tell you more. So we'd open it up to anybody that might have any questions at this point. Maybe some that you wrote down or some that you might have in mind. Do we have anybody that wrote questions down? Okay, yeah, Kathy. Here's the mic. So we're asking about weddings and how they're different in Tanzania.
And I've never been there, so I can't say that it exactly what it is, but it's a lot more tradition, a lot more ceremony. There's a lot more. There's a lot more. It's huge. So like my wedding was awesome, but it's nothing compared to theirs. It seems a lot more special. We've lost some of the specialness I think that goes with ours. It's really hard to explain. I have pictures that I can show you of Diana's wedding, who's Mama Louie's daughter who got married, but it's a much bigger celebration with a lot more ceremony and significance.
The one thing I do know that's a little bit different is you don't necessarily invite people to come to your wedding. If I want to come to your wedding, I will offer up money to help pay for my portion of coming to the wedding. And then you receive tickets. And if I want all of me and my children to come, I would offer up more money. And yeah, and children don't come. But I mean, if I had adult children or something, if they wanted to come or whatever, but there would be more money offered up to help defray the cost of the wedding. Mostly adults, not children. Yeah.
So, okay, our invitations are usually cardstock. Shiny cardstock is probably the extent of our decorative invitations. The invitations for the sending off party that they have, which would be our bachelorette or bridal shower parties, they have invitations for that. And it's the same thing as the wedding. You donate a certain amount of money and you get these invitations. And they were on literally a piece of wood. They had a decoratively cut out piece of wood that had the invitation attached to it. So I don't know if that explains any more of how big and important of a thing it is, but it's just a lot more over there.
One thing that I've been talking with one of the people from there, we've kind of talked about relationships and stuff, and the marriage, as you saw in the pictures, they had the hand up high, and it wasn't just between the people, but it was with God. Divorce is very rare there, and I was talking with a young man, and he is surprised at the divorce that we have here in America. They really take their vows personally. It's not just, here I think it's a piece of paper that people sign, and then that piece of paper can get destroyed just as easy as it was made, but they really value the relationship with each other and the understanding of the whole engagement, send-off, marriage type stuff. Their currency, currently, when we were there, for the dollar, it was about 2,000. It's about 2,500 shillings for $1. Tanzania shillings to our American dollar. To give you a little reference on how much they make, I've been talking with one of the loan officers at SACOS, and she tells me she makes $195 US dollars a month. That's how much, and the cost of living is a little different, and they only buy what they need. Our homes, you only saw a little bit of their homes. The home that we were in, their living room was a couch, a coffee table, a stand for their TV, and 2 end tables, and that was it. Nothing else. Nothing on the walls, nothing else. So their life is way more simpler than what we have here. What was that? No. They can't perform marriages. So an evangelist, so Charlie, like here, he cannot come up and somebody say, I want Charlie to marry us. They cannot perform marriages, and they cannot do funerals. So, and probably the communion, which they take communion maybe once or twice a year. Every 2 months is when they do communion. So, any other questions? Again, if you guys want to talk with each one of us individually, each one of us, the 10 of us, all have separate stories that we would be more than welcome to share. Give us a call, catch us here, we'll go out to coffee, whatever. We would be more than welcome to share our experience with you.
Yes. One thing that one of the first days before we went on the climb, before the climbers left, we went to the office of the district president, Mkuu Jimbo. Mkuu Jimbo. And he stood up and he said, he offered this, and this set the whole stage for the rest of the trip for me. He said, the church here in Tanzania, the church here and the church there are incomplete without each other. Our church here and their church there, we are incomplete without each other. And I saw the rest of that unfold in our connections and our relationships the rest of the time we were there. That, to me, was evidence of how coming together makes us complete. The one thing they did too is they presented, and I'd like to have Steve Jessen come up as president of the congregation. They presented us with, this is very similar type of our carvings that are holding our candles on the ends up here that actually have nativity pictures carved to them. They shared with us, they wanted us to bring this back to our congregation to be hung here. I think Charlie even had an idea of, was there something we talked about? Verse? It might be a verse to go off to the side of this, but they wanted to share this from their church to our church, which really made me feel bad that we didn't take anything over for their church. And I realized it after we got there. So I'm going to present this to be hung here, that where we can decide, but that is their gift from their congregation to us. And Illinois also got one. They sent one back for the Illinois church also. So, all right. Any further questions? All right.
I just want to share this in a, oh yes, question. Nap time will be soon. The last thing I want to share with you is it came from one of our village people. Sometimes you have more wisdom around you than what you realize. But on the last day that we were there, we kind of went around the table, and what did you learn out of this? And Deanne McMorris, who was from Rantoul, Illinois, the woman we almost had to put a radar collar on her to find her because she was all over the place. But she said, I hope and I pray what I learned here I take back and make it something worthwhile. And basically what she was saying is faith without action is nothing. And if we went over there just for the idea of going over there, then we failed you, we failed ourselves, and we failed God. But what we need to do is share that. One last story. They had, Joshua has at his house, it was a Wednesday, and he said, we're going to be getting up early tomorrow morning. And he says, what we're going to do is we're going to have our house-to-house retreat. And we said, well, what is that? And he says, well, a group of us get together. There's 50 of these groups in our church. And he says, we get together at 6 o'clock in the morning, and we have devotions. So we were up the next morning at 6 o'clock. And we noticed that on his front porch he had this pile of plastic chairs. There were about 30 of them. And 27 people showed up. They had an elder there. They had a time of prayer. They had a time of song. And they had everything done within an hour. It was a regular worship service. And after they were all done, you could hear a group of them over in the corner, and the voices were getting loud, and they were pointing fingers. And I said to Joshua, is something going on over there? And he said, no, it's just a small concern. And I thought, oh boy, church council meeting here. And I asked him, I said, is this serious? And he says, oh, no. He says, you see, they've noticed that somebody who is a regular person didn't show up. And they're concerned about them. And they want to know why they're not here. And I said, well, are you going to tell the pastor about that? And he looked at me and he said, Babu, why would we do that? He said, this is our body. We're the body of Christ. And we want to know what has taken our sister from us. It's our responsibility. That young man taught me so much that you all have a ministry, no matter how big that ministry is or how small. You shouldn't push that ministry off on somebody else, because God is asking you to step up and say, here I am, Lord. And he made the remark to me, he said, well, what prevents you from doing these things that you want to do? And I said, well, for one, I said, I'm just getting a little bit up there in years, and, I don't have the stamina that I used to, and on and on. And he just shook his head and he says, oh, Babu. He says, I do believe I'm right when I say that Jesus is much older than you are. And yet he works with you every day, and he hasn't given up, and I don't think he's asked for time off. Out of the mouths of as like 32-year-old babes. But that was the attitude. God has not quit on you. How dare you quit on him? But he said that lovingly.
One more thing here before we wrap up, and this is about the fundraising for the school. We're going to be collecting the climbing pledges for about the next few weeks to a month, and then at that point we'll be wiring all that money over to Tanzania so they can be using it for the BCC. So if you would like to make any donations towards the school over the next few weeks, they would be very welcome, and we can add that to the tally. I am happy to tell you that between this congregation and Pastor Matt's congregation so far, we've raised almost $20,000 for the BCC. So thank you to your donations, your pledges, all the funds that have been come in. Every step was worth just everything that's happening there at the BCC. So.
Just to quickly let you know, we have told them before we left, you must come to us. You must. It's going to be a big hurdle. We're hoping within 2 years. And yes, we will probably need to financially help to get them there. I'm not saying we're going to pay for their whole tickets, but we're talking exorbitant amounts by the time they get passports, visas, and fly here. But we told them, you have got to come to us so more people here can meet them. And yes, more than likely, we will have another group going back over there at some point. But we said, please, you have to come here. So just know that you're going to be hearing words from us of how do we get a group of them here, hopefully within the next few years. So just know that that is looking ahead. So thank you, everybody. Thank you for being part of this.